Okay, this video is going to address King Alfred of England and Henry IV of Germany, the Emperor of Germany, and his relationship with Pope Leo III. We don't need to know a lot about Alfred except that he's known as Alfred the Great. Why? Because he was instrumental in removing the Vikings from England. And the Vikings had a capital city in Dublin. They founded Dublin, but they liked England, so they came over, they conquered, they charged the English tons of silver as payment, treated them horribly. They needed to try to find a way out. Alfred was the one individual around the 9th century who was able to mount an army and defeat them. The Vikings were wrongly called the Danes, so whenever you ever hear the English speak about the Danes, it's really the Vikings, and the Vikings were from other places. Now, the important thing about England as well with King Alfred is he very much admired education, and he set up schools very similarly to what Charlemagne did. And he was distressed that most of the clergy in England could not read or write, so he wanted to guarantee that at least a priest could read the Bible. So he set up many schools, imported a lot of educators to England. One of my favorite quotes by him is this, I like this: "He seems to me a very foolish man and very wretched, who will not increase his understanding while he is in the world, and even wish and long to reach that endless life where all should be made clear." Here is a guy that really thought, you know, if you're going to live in the world, if you're going to be here every day, to try to learn something, try to improve your mind. The world is improved by the ideas you learn, by the things that you incorporate into your life that make you a more intelligent person. And that's something that every one of you should be very clearly aware of. Now I want to discuss Henry IV and Leo III. And what's important for me is this play between who really is in power. And I want to read a few quotes to you. The papacy, which is this is the office of the Pope, held that its responsibility for souls entitled it to supervise and direct the conduct of all people, and even emperors. On the other side of the coin, in terms of what Henry and other emperors would have thought, the scholars employed by kings and emperors replied that the monarch receives his power directly from God and is answerable only to him, and that the church's concern should be with the affairs of heaven rather than those of earth. And I'll finish this with a sort of a summary. Kings and emperors had their armies, popes had none, but they possessed divine authority and spiritual weapons: excommunication, interdict, anathema. As a result, the opposing forces were almost evenly balanced. So a king could be excommunicated, and in a Christian empire that could have very strong ramifications for his power, especially not only with his people, but with the bishops who oftentimes worked with the king. Interdict means that a person cannot receive the sacraments, communion, or confession, for instance. And anathema is just a curse upon you. I'm not sure exactly how that works, but it's still not a very good thing. Now, with Henry IV, let's keep in mind that within the German Empire, this tradition that began with Charlemagne of emperors appointing bishops and priests to posts, emperors, not popes. And popes did not appreciate that because they felt like kings were imposing upon their power. And remember that it's just not religion, it's a religion as an institution. The Christian religion seeks to have power, seeks to guide people morally. And how do they guide people morally? By gaining political power. And that's where the influence really comes in. So this investiture of power is called lay investiture. A layman is a person who is not a member of the clergy or a member of the church. And of course, Henry IV has been doing this for many years. he appoints bishops as his vassals. And remember, we're in the Middle Ages, and we have nobles, we have lords, we have dukes, okay? But we have bishops as well, and they act as nobles for the king, for the emperor. They collect taxes, and remember that an emperor cannot do anything without tax revenues. They keep the law. So they're really no different than what a noble would be in the Middle Ages. Now, Pope Leo wants to abolish lay investiture, and he wants to say that no, the Pope, as a descendant of Peter, is the only one who has the power to appoint God's servants. Now, Henry is incensed by this. He thinks Leo III has gone insane, because for hundreds of years, emperors have been appointing bishops. So he calls together bishops and some of his princes and dukes, and calls for the removal of Pope Leo. Once Leo hears of this, he excommunicates Henry. He throws him out of the church. Now, this poses a problem for him, because where does the loyalty lie now with his vassals, who are the bishops? And the princes don't want to turn against the Pope either, because that would reflect badly on the people. So once Henry is excommunicated, the princes and the bishops turn against him. And they call for a meeting of German bishops to elect a new emperor. And they ask Leo to come and head this meeting and this appointment, because remember, popes anoint emperors, popes approve or legitimize who can be emperor. Now, Henry IV is pretty politically savvy. He's in trouble, and he wants to remain the emperor. So what does he do? He decides he's going to cut off Leo on his way to Germany, and he's going to grovel. So he meets the Pope at the Pope's castle in Canossa, which is high in the mountains. It's snowy and it's cold, and he does grovel. And the Pope makes him wait outside the gates of the castle for 3 days. And Henry is dressed in like a flimsy robe or gown without shoes. He's freezing. He knows that he has to do this, and the Pope eventually lets him in 3 days later. And just imagine you're in trouble with your parents and you've got to grovel. I'm sorry, I didn't mean it. I'll never do it again. Can you please forgive me? This is essentially what Henry does with Leo. And Leo forgives him and allows him to remain the emperor. And so Henry keeps his political power. Now, his bishops and his princes are flummoxed by that, and now they're in fear of their own power as well. Now, what's interesting is Henry had he never ever said that he would give up lay investiture, and he promised that to Leo in Canossa. So he goes back to Germany and mounts an army, goes into Rome, captures Rome, and demands that the Pope re-anoint him as the emperor. And Leo says, I will not do that. You have broken your promise to me. You continue to appoint bishops when you promised that you wouldn't. So Leo appoints what we call an anti-pope. He just makes somebody a pope who anoints him. And Leo flees. He goes into France. Now he needs help. He needs to get back into Rome. He needs to regain his power. So there is a Norman warlord, and remember the Normans lived in northern France. Okay, they're descendants of the Vikings, whose name is Robert Guiscard, and he's pretty powerful in the southern part of Italy. And he asks Guiscard for help at restoring his power. And Guiscard says, okay, I will. And he goes into Rome, and he sacks the entire city, sells many people into slavery. His soldiers rape women, they rob people, they take as much booty as they can for themselves. And Leo does not regain his power. As a matter of fact, he dies soon afterward. And I find that particularly interesting because throughout history you have popes asking these warlords or people with power to help them out, and they don't realize that these warlords don't really have any morals. They simply want to take things from people. And Leo certainly did not understand that, and he dies as a very poor man, broken, and Henry, of course, maintains his power. Guiscard takes Rome, and you know, 2 winners and then 1 loser. Okay, it's a great story. Henry manipulates Leo. He lies. He's an emperor and he's a politician. Leo needs power, and when he needs power, all popes call on people who have military might. Guiscard has that. Unfortunately, he doesn't read him very well. So think about that. Think about how war affects groups of people, how war is used as a political tool, not for justice, not for some kind of legitimate moral rights, but to allow somebody to gain power or maintain their power. All right, hope you learned something.